for the most part, people's attitudes have changed. We now know that if you ask people whether you have to be white to be British, for example, there's a sea change in that. We know that intermarriage is much more acceptable than ever it was. We know that in parts of towns and cities, there's a huge degree of trust and respect between different communities that didn't exist. So in general, that is true. But what has also happened is there is a strong minority which has grown, which is in really virulently racist, probably misogynistic too, against any sense of change. So we have a much more general swathe of opinion, which is positive, but we now have growing much more vocal minority, often stirred up by politicians, not necessarily in this country, but from elsewhere, who are much more prepared to be vocal and aggressive and hostile and abusive.
I guess, and I'm just going off on a tangent here. What you made me think of is the report that Tony Sewell brought out just a couple of weeks ago, which sort of said that institutional racism no longer exists in the UK. Is that something that you would agree with?
No, it's not. I mean, I think I read the report and I looked at the way they defined institutional racism and systemic racism, and that didn't really accord with my experience. What I think they needed to understand is that it's not an institution that discriminates. It's the people within that. It's their culture and behaviors. It's the processes and procedures, which are all man-made, and therefore they can be changed. The way they described it was almost as though it was a building that somehow discriminated. Everything that goes on within an institution is controlled and governed by the attitudes and values of the people within it. And so if we see that there is some really hostile and abusive behavior going on, then it has to come from people within institutions. It has to be addressed.